Welcome to the Understanding Project Management Discussions podcast. This is Dave Barrett. My guest today is Antony Skinner. Antony's background includes IT and software development as a line manager, program manager, and independent consultant, as well as being an associate professor of project management. Our discussion will be focused on all things related to the management of people on a project, including the use of power and influence by the project manager. Please welcome Antony Skinner. Hi, Antony. Thanks for coming on to this morning, and it's good to see you.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
All right. Well, today we are going to talk about people, about the management of people during a project, and particularly during the executing phase, but not exclusively, throughout the project. And just to kick things off, I just want to relate back to my own experiences that at some point in my career, I was few years out of school where there was a point where I wasn't looking after just myself. I suddenly had these other people that I needed to manage. I had to worry about other people, which was interesting and challenging. And I remember at the time, there's almost like you go through an identity crisis where you say, what kind of a manager am I going to be? Am I going to be the supportive football coach from the movies? Am I going to be Robin Williams and Goodwill Hunt? Dead Poet Society, or am I going to be that sort of stern sort of leader who's on top of every detail and barking out orders from on high? Who am I? So, what advice would you have? Just to sort of kick things off, what advice would you have for people who are about to become managers of people, project managers, or managers in general?
Yeah, I think for me, I had a very lucky start to my career. I had a mentor. I was on a program where basically we had a couple of years of graduate training to working towards chartered engineer, the equivalent of PEng in Ontario. And so I had a mentor, and I would always say to people, even if you don't have a formal mentor put in place, find yourself somebody who's really experienced, who's not in your direct management line, who can you can bounce ideas off, you can talk to about the situations that you're facing and how they might approach them. I mean, you're going to be your own person, but it doesn't hurt to speak to people who've got more experience. Okay, and I think this is the biggest challenge for a lot of new grads or new people working in the industry, is that they don't actually think that there are, people out there who can offer them good advice. They want to do everything themselves, make the same mistakes. So get a mentor. That would definitely be what I would recommend.
Yeah, I agree. That is so important. And when you said that, I think back to, again, my career. I was early into being a manager, and I was struggling with, I was out at odds with other, people working for me or with me. And I remember saying to him, his name was Martin. And I remember saying, Martin, how do you resolve when there's right and wrong in a situation, like in the workplace? Like, we have these issues and it's right and wrong. And he said, Dave, it's not so much right and wrong, it's what's helpful.
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me. And so it's just an example, but it was an example of, he was probably around the age I am now, and he had gone through a million types of situations and so on. And he was offering that, advice to the young manager who was being very, very, very particular and focused on things. Like, I made a lot of mistakes as a young man. I learned through experience, but he was trying to provide that sort of advice. So I absolutely agree.
And I think there's two types of there's two types of individuals. There's those who kind of reach the management position by just length of term, or are asked to take on that role because perhaps they're the most expert in their particular field. And there's those who actually aim to become managers, who want to do it, because they feel they want to be, more of that kind of people person and lead by example. And you can see a difference. And these people tend to be in positions for a long time, and you see a difference in the way that they behave, the way they interact with their staff, the way they interact with others, depending on how they got into that position in the first place. And so you've got to want to work with people. You've got to want to, help others, or, help develop others. I think that's one of the key things. And that's true as much as a project manager as it is as a line manager, right? You have to want to do it. If you don't want to do it, it shows in the way that you manage.
Right.
And one of the things I always learned right from the very beginning was that 360-degree feedback is really important. If you're going to sit down with the people that are working for you, working with you, you're not just telling them how you think they're performing. You're saying, how do you think I'm performing? Am I a good manager? Am I a poor manager? Are there things that irk you about me? Are there things that, I could be doing better? And have that conversation. And it also makes your staff respect you more. Right. So when we go back to this referential power, I don't think that just having legitimate power, having, that formal position in the company is enough. Right. You've also got to have people working for you who want to work for you. They respect you. And I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And just, just to define 360-degree feedback, that's sort of the concept of you're getting, feedback, and even there's performance appraisals that are based on 360 degrees, people that work for you, people that you work for, and even your peers, getting feedback from all angles. And so absolutely agreed. Um, when you open up like that as a manager, that you know yeah, seems to improve the relationship. It's no longer sort of you on high, sitting higher in your chair than them, and they're sitting in a lower chair, sort of that traditional thing. You're talking more as people to each other. So that's key. So
doesn't mean that you don't have to have rules though, Dave, right? I mean, the key thing is, I think, yes, you want people to treat you as another member of the team, not as the boss, unless it comes to where the serious decisions have got to be made. I always called myself, as a manager, I was a democratic dictator. And the way I defined that was that, we all had an input. We all had to put forward our ideas. Everybody was welcome to say whatever they want. But once the decision was made, once I made the decision, we all had to go in that direction. And I think that's important. Everybody it's teamwork. Everybody's got, a lot of opinions. Some are right, some are wrong. But ultimately, once you decide on a path forward, everybody has to fall into line. And that's also very important.
Right. I agree with that. I was going to ask the question of so which type of management style do you subscribe to? Which you answered the democratic dictator. I've also had the same philosophy. I refer to mine as the benevolent dictator, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
The same thing of we're a team, and I don't want to be a dick. Casting the final vote is something that hopefully you don't have to use. Hopefully the team is able to work, and I'm able to we'll be working and developing decisions, and I'm more just guiding and supporting it. I very rarely need to cast that final vote, but it's there if needed. To me, that's a good model.
Yeah, my first manager once said to me, your responsibility is to make yourself redundant. That's the only way you're going to get promoted. Right. Because if you're the person that, everybody else has to come to, the senior management have to come to you, to find out what's going on or whatever, and they don't feel they can talk to the team, or the team won't talk to them, then you're going to be stuck in that position. Right. And the people that are in your team don't develop unless they have the right to make decisions. Right. This is all organizational behavior stuff, right? I mean, any of the students that have taken that, this is all organizational behavior. A good team works best, when, there is no, there is no kind of, I don't want to say there is no leader, but, there is nobody who is always driving the team. The team has to drive itself. And I think that's something which I found interesting.
Well, I think it would be a really good thing, and if the objective would be almost that, if you were the leader of the team, the manager of the team, and so on, if somebody was observing you interacting with your team on an ongoing basis, they wouldn't necessarily know that you're the manager, that you wouldn't always be at the front of the room. You wouldn't always be the one writing things down on the whiteboard, that you would allow others a little bit of space
Yeah.
to develop that sort of teamwork. But how do you get there? So this is like I think a good vision to get to, but as in, oftentimes new project managers or just managers in general who are starting to go into that field, or they get that responsibility, they don't know how. They feel like they need to make decisions. They and sometimes they'll overshoot a little bit, and they'll become not the benevolent or democratic dictator. They'll become the dictator.
Yeah.
And turn the tea off. Like what would how do you because they feel like, hey, I'm the manager, I should be making decisions, right? That's sometimes that's the interpretation.
I think you've got to develop all those soft skills first, right? You've got to be somebody who is capable of good communication, of you've got to develop those influence skills, those persuasion skills, or your negotiation skills. But you've also got to be humble and demonstrate that you've got a lot to learn, especially a new PM, or even somebody who's an experienced person but going into a new environment, as many of us have been throughout our careers. You've got to go in there sort of saying, okay, look, I don't know everything. I rely on people who are more expert in different groups, especially, PMs. Although, we say that, they have to have a level of expertise. Their level of expertise has to be very wide. If I was doing one of my early roles as a software project manager, I don't know everything there is to know about software. Maybe I've done some development work, maybe I've done some test work, but there are other people in the team who are the experts in those areas. And I have to let them guide me and help me understand how things are working. I don't go there as a project manager and say, okay, well, you're not doing the right thing. This is not what we agreed. It's a case of, okay, this isn't going the direction we thought it was going to go. So can you help me understand why that is? What is it? Well, when we first did our scope, we kind of forgot a couple of things, and so now we need to do this. Okay, now I understand what you're doing. Thank you for that. And so you're always learning from other people, but using the soft skills to do it. If you walk into a room and say, I don't know anything, they're going to go, well, you're a waste of time, right? But if you go in there saying, I have my area of expertise, you guys have your area of expertise, so why don't you help educate me, and then I can smooth the path for what's needed to make us successful as a team.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. There's a lot of answers to that.
Yeah.
That's an endless question or answer to that question. Yeah, I think that's something that new managers struggle with. They often, and maybe I did too, think I need to be the best at whatever the skill is, or whatever I need to be the super programmer or the super, marketing person. So the manager has to be better, higher skilled in the subject matter than the team. And that's not always, or that's not necessarily, rarely true, and can even be negative. For example, I often use sports analogies for, the coach of the team is like the project manager. And I think we can think about the coach of hockey teams or baseball teams or whatever your sport that you want to think about. They aren't necessarily, they probably have players that are playing that they're vastly superior to their skills that they ever had. In fact, there's sort of studies or at least anecdotal evidence that really good players don't make the best coaches because they just do it naturally. They don't even know how to describe what it's like, because their talent is intuitive.
It's a different skill set, right?
It's a different skill set.
And that's the thing that you've got to get across to the team as well, right? My skill set as a project manager or as a line manager, it may have come from being an expert in a certain area before, but now I'm in this position, my skill set has changed, and therefore I'm not expecting to be the guy that can solve all of the problems. All I can do is to give you the tools for you to solve the problems, because you are the experts here. Right. But on the other hand, if there's something that needs to be resolved between two teams who are banging heads to each other, then I'll demonstrate to you, that my skill set is to be able to resolve those conflicts and help people to work better together so we get better solutions. It always frustrated me that, you could walk into one room well, this at the beginning of my career, it used to frustrate me. At the end, it just made me smile. But, you used to be able to walk into a room, say hardware engineers, and they would say, oh, those software people, they just don't understand. They're not giving us what we need. We asked for this and we haven't got it yet. And you walk into the software team, and the software team says, oh, those hardware people, they just don't get it. We have to do it this way first before we can provide them with what they've been asking for. And and you kind of go, okay, so we've got two different groups of people here who obviously aren't really understanding each other's needs. So, I shall demonstrate what I can do here. I'll bring you together and say, okay, so let's understand each other. And then, you walk away from that conversation where you've left these two groups working together, or even just two people, and then they come back to you later and you say, thanks for that. Thanks for resolving that situation between us, because that's really helped us to work better together. And kind of go, well, yeah, okay, that's just basic management skills that you guys will eventually learn.
Right. Or they're ones that you just naturally, that was a key skill that you had and it developed. Yeah, if I think back to my own career, I started as in systems development. I was a developer at that time. We called ourselves programmers. And I was, pretty good, but, I would say middling, probably middle of the pack in terms of skill as a programmer. But I had better skills as a communicator, as a, as my people skills were good. I had a sort of more of a knack of interfacing between systems and the business organization, the users, as we used to, in systems terminology, but the business people. So that was where my skill set lay. And so that then, translated well into a project management role and so on. One of the things that you touched on, I think, earlier around influence and persuasion, and that's something that I've when teaching the subject, this topic comes up, the concept of power and influence and influencing skills and persuasion, and the sister or the cousin topic of communication. When it's hard to talk about influence without talking about communication, but I try to impress upon the class of how important that is in real life projects. Is as a project manager, you rarely have what we call legitimate power. Of you're not the boss of the organization, but you got to get things done, and the only way you can do it is through your personality, or your power of persuasion, your negotiating skills, and so on. That's what's going to get you there, not the ability for you to say you have to do this.
That's what I said. It's all those soft skills that you have to learn, and you have to learn those, very early in your career, right? I mean, even, my career started off as a hardware engineer. I developed our, synthesizers, RF synthesizers, and then I kind of moved into software, because in the company we were working in, it was the first time 8-bit microprocessors were being used I was designing military radios, and then I started finding all of the gaps of things that we needed that we weren't doing. Right. And so you had to sort of go to the boss and explain to them and say to them, look, we could be far better in this developing this product if we had these facilities. Maybe we're looking for a system simulator. Maybe we need a faster set of computers. Maybe we need some of these big system design things. We need to help the manufacturing people out by perhaps we're going to design into our software the ability for the actual board to communicate with the manufacturing system, and I found all these little gaps. And so, I was developing this reputation as somebody who was identifying a problem that nobody else realized that we had, and offering a way out of that problem, or finding a solution for it. And so you then start to build this reputation of being able to, get things for the project that other people have been sort of, trying to justify for week after week after week with the management, and you're just going in there and kind of influencing them, right? And then you realize afterwards that that's what you're doing. You're using, whatever knowledge you have, whatever persuasive skills that you've developed, you're using a justification and you're doing a job of communicating well with the management, that they start to take your word for it. You get to the point where you can walk into a room and just say, folks, we've got this challenge, this is what we need to solve it, and they go, fine. You don't have to justify. Yes. Right. And once you've built up that kind of skill, you've definitely got that, what we call, referential power, that people kind of, say, hey, this is great. We know when Antony comes and talks to us, that he's telling us exactly what it is that we need, and we're going to make sure that it happens. Yep. And you kind of go, okay, so I've managed to influence you and persuade you to do things the way that I think they need to be done. And it's the same with working with any of the teams. When I gave the example of the hardware and software team, it's persuading the two of them that they have to listen to each other's views. Okay. And if they still can't make a decision, you're starting to do this. Okay, so what can we do? How can we negotiate a way out of this solution? Or, perhaps I need to kind of influence you in the direction I think you should be going. Right. And you start pulling all those soft skills together.
Yep.
But fundamentally, you've got to have people like you, right? You've got to build that referential power, because if they don't like you, they don't trust you. And if they don't trust you, you can't achieve anything. Oh, it's fundamental.
I know it seems odd, like for those that have not been involved in business, maybe large organizations, they might say, what do you mean like you? Like, aren't we a business? And isn't this just transactional? But no, we're a bunch of people working together. There's elements of high school
that are personality clashes.
Yeah, personality clashes. But whether somebody likes you is going to be important, in terms of influencing decisions and so on. You're much more likely to be persuaded by somebody you like, because, well, why do you like them? Well, probably because they're, honest. They know what they're talking about. They haven't deceived you before, or they've and so it's not just it's what have you had to do to be liked, and that will cause, and that's that power you're talking about. And the one word I really picked up on and what you were saying was reputation.
Yeah.
And that is something that is so important. That is your currency within an organization, is your reputation.
And it takes time to build.
It takes time to build, and you can burn it down very easily. Like it's like you're making deposits into the reputation bank. Every time you do something, you do a good turn for someone, you get a deposit in your bank. You're honest, you're friendly, etc. Your reputation is increasing. Oh, if you kind of pull a fast one on someone, they're going to tell a bunch of people, and suddenly your reputation goes down. Nobody tells you. It's not like, this isn't an episode of Black Mirror where there's a reputation number that is on your phone, but it is there in people's minds.
And it takes a long time to recover, as you say. I mean, I could give you a classic example. I took over a team when I was working for BlackBerry, who had to work very closely with the factory. They produced the test harnesses, or the test software for the radio testing, and nobody in the factory liked them. Everybody thought they were a waste of space. If a problem came up, you'd say, well, why didn't you contact this team, this calibration team, to help you out? Because they never want to come to the factory and sort things out. They always say, it works for us, it should work for you. And I took over this team, and I spoke to all of the members of the team and heard their perspective, and spoke to everybody who were their customers and listened to their perspective. And I made a commitment. Now, because of my own reputation, I made a commitment to the customers, to the factory and everything else like that, and said, I will do whatever it takes, to get you to be able to work closely with this team again. And then sat down with the team and said, okay, guys, we're in this situation where our reputation is terrible, and we need to work out what it is that we can do to make our customers happy, because fundamentally they're our customers. Right. And it took a while for both sides, right? First of all, I had to kind of be a little bit directive in terms of the expectations I set for my team that would bring them towards meeting the needs of their customers, and at the same time say to the customers, hey, look, we're doing our best right now to turn this around, so how about giving us a break? And if you have an issue with somebody, don't immediately assume that that's that's it, they're still the same way they used to be. Sort of try and work with me to understand, what it is that we're trying to do. Because you get to a point, if you've got a bad reputation, where it doesn't matter even if you're trying to do your best, the other side thinks you're not trying to do your best.
Right.
Right.
They'll be distrustful of
Yeah.
everything.
So you have to try and build that back again. So reputation, you said trust. Reputation is as much about trust as it is about skill, or about knowledge.
Yep.
And that you can take a long time to come back from that.
Yeah.
So you're right. Never have a bad day where you upset somebody, because they're likely to remember that. We have a much longer term memory of negative things than we do of positive things.
Absolutely. Things when I've been slighted in the past, I remember that, it sticks with me. And if it happens, just a, word of advice is every once in a while, you might put your foot in your mouth, you might, inadvertently do something. If you do, quickly repair it. Like, reputational damage. If you can recover, go and say, look, that's not how I saw it going down. That's not what I intended, etc. That's something you can do to repair that reputation. So,
and it's worthwhile saying, Dave, that with all of these things, it's in my personal experience, when you're using things like influence and reputation, it's more important, or it's very important to make sure that in the upward path, the management path is where you're focusing a lot of the effort. Because if a VP or senior VP or whatever else, tells his team that he's not happy with the way that you're doing things, then they're going to be listening to their boss rather than necessarily listening to you. They may have thought they had a great reputation with you, but if you have a poor reputation with their management, you will find barriers are placed in the way.
Yes.
So I think it's, you've always got to say, okay, I'm not just dealing with the people I'm dealing with day to day. I've got to think about their management, right? Yes. If their management have got anything against me, then I need to repair that quickly, because otherwise I'm going to find all these blockades that I wouldn't expect.
Absolutely. I've over the years, I've noticed there are people that work well, sort of, with the people, and I don't mean an up and down in a I don't know, superior sense, but they work well with the people below them, their team, and so on. There's other people that'll work well with their peers, and there's other people that work well with upward for their management. But the ideal is if you can do all, is that you can both manage up and manage down.
That's an essential skill for a PM. Essential skill.
It's that, again, it's almost that 360. It's in a different context, but you're not just focused on your team and build great relationships, but your manager, you have a confrontational relationship. That's not good either. So, but yeah, I can't talk enough about the value of understanding power. You mentioned, various ways of creating it, and which is reputation is related as well, which allows you to influence. That's what project managers do, is that they need to get things done. And just one of the things that it reminds me of is oftentimes when I'm working with student project teams, they're having difficulty, their team members aren't getting things done, or they're frustrated. And there's often the idea that, when I get out in the work world, that'll be different, because I can just tell people what to do. And, and I kind of help coach it a little bit, but indicate basically, a lot of what you're experiencing here, you're going to experience out there. When you're part of the software team working with the hardware team, they don't report to you. You can't make them do anything. You can persuade them, you can influence them. They can get to the point where you mentioned the ideal is if you come and they'll say, yeah, if Antony says it, then yeah, I agree. He's never steered us wrong before. Like, that's where you want to get to, where people will trust you on your word. They're not going to be saying, what's he trying to do? What's is he trying to get out of work here? What's going on? That's when things don't work.
And we have to remember the size of the organization as well, because, you could be in that situation on every project if you're in a massive organization, dealing with a new set of people each time. BlackBerry was like that as it was growing, that, we every time a program manager or a project manager got assigned, it was a different team. and so it's
At this point in the discussion, our internet connection was lost. I'd like to thank Antony for his insights.